Welcome to the session. Today in this session, we will cover the topic, what are errors and what are the regular types of errors in writing. Well, let us go back to our school days. Do you remember a time when you wrote 2 plus 2 equals 5 and your marks were deducted? What was your feeling at that juncture? It was something like this. How could I do this? How could I do this, add and make it 5 when I know the correct answer is 4? Yes, there you are. The key word is I know. It means I know the correct answer. But maybe because of hurry or lack of concentration that the pen slipped and you wrote 5 instead of 4. This is a case of mistake. On the other hand, think of a situation where you might have used or heard someone use a sentence like this. I eat bread in the morning. Or say a sentence like, of all the boxes, few is left. Or, when she came in, she sat down on the big sofa. What do you note here? In all the above 3 sentences, we find incorrect syntactical usages. This is not a mistake. This is an error. This is not a mistake but an error. Why? Because eated for ate in sentence 1, few are left instead of few is left in sentence 2, and she sat down instead of she sit down in sentence 3 has occurred because of lack of correct knowledge of the verb tense order. Hence, it is a case of error. In all these cases, the accepted rules of grammar has been violated. So what are mistakes? Let us take a look at the main points and that can be considered as mistakes. Mistakes result from lack of performance. It is a temporary failure or a miss to use a system correctly. It can be made both by the L1 and L2 speakers of English. It is easily recognized and rectified by the native speakers. Native speakers means the L1 learners of English. It is easily recognized and rectified by the native speakers. Mistakes include slip and ungrammaticality but can be identified what went wrong. It may occur due to lack of concentration, hesitations, forgetfulness or processing problems. It can be self-corrected because the correct one is known. The correct answer is known but the problem takes place in processing the message. It can be self-corrected because it is known. On the other hand, errors take place due to lack of correct knowledge of the rules of grammar. It needs guidance to correct the incorrect information. For example, in case of a mistake, we often find there are slips in the use of articles or missing a punctuation mark. After reflecting on these differences, you can now go back to your own teaching learning classroom situations or circumstances of language practices as are constructed. Analyze them in terms of principles of language usage and acceptable expression. What are errors? Results from the lack of knowledge. Learners' competence in the target language can be partially assessed by an error which a learner makes while using the language. It cannot be easily recognized by the L2 learners of English because the correct answer or the correct knowledge of that grammar is not known by the learner. It needs guidance by the facilitator to be aware of the deviation that the learner has made from the accepted rules of grammar. This is called the breaches of the code. For example, a sentence like this, the computer and its power supply are for sale. Now here IT apostrophe is an incorrect usage because it implies it is. However, the correct answer would be the computer and its power supply are for sale where it does not use an apostrophe S. According to Stephen Pitcorder's framework for describing errors, there are three types of errors: pre-systematic or type 1, systematic or type 2, and post-systematic or type 3 error. Type 1 or pre-systematic error are random errors. In this kind, the learner is completely unaware of the existence of a particular rule in a target language. As a result, the errors are randomly made. Type 2 or systematic errors. These errors occur when the learner adopts a rule for communication, but it has adopted a wrong rule. Naturally, the application would be incorrect. The learner can explain the incorrect rule that he or she has adopted, but the error cannot be corrected because the correct knowledge of the rule is yet unknown to the learner. Type 3 or post-systematic errors. It occurs when the learner knows the correct rule of target language but uses it inconsistently. These are called mistakes because the learner knows a rule but slips in its correct application. Well, while accounting for why errors are made, Taylor in 1986 has pointed out psycholinguistic, social-linguistic, epistemic, and discourse structuring issues as the significant causes or sources of error for L2 acquisition. Burt, on the other hand, have classified errors into local and global errors. What do you mean by the local and global errors? Let us take an example. A sentence like this: I take coffee, but my friend said not, as that we should get late for meeting. Did you get any meaning? No. Did you understand or comprehend any meaning of the overall sentence? Can you comprehend? Can you guess the meaning? No. Why? Because the overall structure of the sentence is hampered. It has disrupted the entire meaning of utterances. The overall content, flow of ideas, and organization of the argument becomes erroneous. This is an instance of global error. On the other hand, local errors refer to an error in a particular part or constituent of a sentence. Such an error do not disrupt the overall meaning of a sentence. We can comprehend and understand what the meaning is, but maybe there is an error in one part of the sentence. Errors in grammatical parts, spelling, or punctuation are local errors. For example, a sentence like, if I heard from him, I will let you know. So, you can understand the meaning of the entire sentence. You can comprehend what the speaker is actually trying to say. But he or she has made a wrong usage in the use of the word heard. The error is with the use of the word heard and not the entire sentence. As a result, we can comprehend what the speaker is trying to say. This is a case of local error. While concluding, we can say errors in learning help the facilitators to assess how much learning has actually taken place and what are the types of errors that the learner has made. This gives a feedback to the language teacher to identify and analyze where the learning or teaching situation has gone wrong. What are those areas that need correction? What are those areas where the problem has taken place, and accordingly the language teacher can modify the learning and teaching situation. It provides examples of negative learning and provides a feedback about the effectiveness of the teaching learning materials as well as the teaching techniques. Because it is not always with the teaching learning situation that we find problems, it is also with the teaching learning materials. So it gives a feedback to the entire structure of the teaching learning process. In our final section of the day's topic, let us now look at the common errors in English language writing. Errors in English language writing are frequent in the following cases: syntactic verb tense error, subject verb agreement error, singular plural error. You often find that people use the word children's. So that is the incorrect knowledge of the singular plural system. Word form order, disordering of morpheme or a group of morphemes. Errors in using affixes, and and there are errors in using articles and preposition. Next, we find semantic errors. These are errors in the logical compilation of meanings. While trying to bring in coherence in the writing structure, the learner makes an error to pinpoint the paragraphs, the sequencing of the ideas, or the logical flow of the ideas. We have spelling errors, which is very common in writing. Lexical errors or errors in the choice of vocabulary. At the same time, we also find a lot of typographical errors. And a very common one is the use of punctuation mark. We often make errors in the correct usage of punctuation. Correct usage of punctuation in the sense when to put comma, or if it is a question form, we have to use a question mark. So these are the errors which a language learner needs to understand in order to present a skilled writing. While concluding, it needs mention that writing is one of the most critical of the 4 language skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Proper layout, development, and movement, both in terms of content and style, are important. The pedagogical implications of teaching writing skill involves proper planning of the stages of the entire writing process. Errors are a part of the system which provides feedback to the language teachers to clip and shape or reshape the process and techniques of teaching and learning writing skill. Writing is undoubtedly a skill, and it is a documentation. So once the documentation is already made, so we have to be careful in every step of the process of the documentation. However, the treatment of errors, particularly of the learners of English as L2, should receive more attention and strategic handling in accordance to the background of the learners. It also establishes the ground to analyze and revamp teaching materials and teaching techniques. Only then we can present writing as a skilled use of the language. However, we cannot say that there will not be any error, but let us try to minimize the errors as much as we can. Thank you.